Good Monday morning, everyone. Oh my gosh. Okay, before we dive in, you're listening to Author Talk with me, Aimee, Valerie, Russell, and our lovely two guests today is Rachel and Maria, and they're going to talk about their podcast as well. But holy crap, let's just dive into the weather here at Texas, okay? Russell was in Houston and decided to bring a freaking crazy storm, okay, that hit. It hit me first. I'm about an hour and a half north of Houston. It hit me first, but oh my gosh, it did not hit me nearly as bad as you guys. We only had 40-mile-per-hour winds and flooding.
That's
you
nothing.
guys you guys had a tornado, 110 miles. You still have people without power and without internet. I know because
my kids.
Yes, my kids too.
Dina is without internet or she did get power back, but she is currently without internet. So it has been crazy. And I'm just over here. Me and Josh went to the house to check to see, they had just graded. So we're just like, let's go see what it goes.
That's because you check every day because you are a conscientious customer of a builder, which I recommended against.
I do. Now, the fun part of that is Josh was coming back from Austin. So it hit Austin first. Josh brought it with him, which I told him, just take it on back. Just go on back, take it back, come back when it's not around. And so he had got back right before it started raining. And he was like, yeah, let's just go do it. So, fun, crazy times. But the flooring is in my house. My carpet is in. And my appliances so far have gone in. I'm still harassing them because some of my fixtures aren't right and those kinds of things. So I'm still harassing and doing those things. But let me just, I'm going to toot my own horn on this milestone. I had a friend come over with me last week. So for those of you that know me or talk often to me, I was not very communicative. That's a new word, but we're going to go communicative last week because I was packing. Hence, my background is back up because I packed up this room and my daughter's room for the most part. Bunk beds are down, all of that, while my husband was gone because then he can't tell me how to pack, and I thoroughly enjoy that. I can just pack the boxes how I want. I don't need someone to over-engineer it. So it was fabulous to do. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So now he can do the rest of the packing because it's all the heavy stuff. So I am slowly making progress on that front. I did not realize that when I calculated it, I only had 15 days, like business days, weekdays, however you want to classify that, until I move in to my house, which is
maybe.
No, that's the far end. That's going on the far end. And it's intense. So we're going to get it done. It's going to be fabulous. And it's just, yay. We're all super fun. One of the cool things, though, before we dive into everybody else's weekend. So my daughters we have a 1-story house and we're going to a 2-story house. Okay. Just full disclaimer. We have carpet on our stairs. And whenever we go to the house, I now let my daughters go in because usually some of the work's being on the outside, and they race going down the stairs. And they seriously get it. Meadow's all leaning forward, really getting it. She's got to win, be first, do all these things. So it's fun to kind of see we're already creating memories in the house, even though we're not fully moved in yet.
Right. That's a trip to the orthopedic in the future.
I've already had that. We've had a broken arm and a broken thumb. So, we're moving up in this world, and we're only 4 and 3. So wow. Yeah, I can only imagine. But I hope everybody else's weekend was more fun and adventurous than mine. So we're going to do popcorn on who wants to talk about their weekend first. If no one raises hands, I'm calling people out. Russell.
Okay. So I was in Houston when the tornado hit. We were, I was with my 3 baby granddaughters at the time, and they freaked out.
Well, duh. I mean, I would.
Well, I mean, I was raised in a tornado alley. So where there's tornadoes 20 out of 30 days, it's no big deal. Right?
Okay.
But this actually got close. Got close. And so that was an exciting night to watch every time I would walk over to look outside to see if it passed, and it passed really quick. My 2-year-old granddaughter would yell, "Pops," is what they call me. "Pops, come back, come back." They did not approve of me looking out the window. So that was actually really cute.
You matter to her. Oh, I love it.
I was a little shocked.
My cup runneth over.
Yes. So that was
shocked.
the good part of the weekend. The bad part of there's not a bad part of the weekend. We're back in the hills of Georgia, and there was a dispute this weekend on one of the writers' channels about should you write for the audience or yourself? I thought that was an interesting question and to watch everyone. And I actually started on one side because I actually started writing for myself. We all do. But then the question comes in your Rachel and Maria, I know you have books. How many books do you have?
Books.
Yeah. Are you writing?
Yeah. So, I mean, for myself, I'm more of a playwright for theater.
Okay.
Nice.
So for that, I mean, like my mind automatically jumps to, I write for myself first and foremost, because that's how I can keep things true.
Right.
True to my experiences. I'm not co-opting somebody else's story.
Not like Shakespeare.
No.
Because he co-opted. That's what he did. He would co-opt.
Exactly. Yeah. Was there a Shakespeare? Was there a collaboration of folks that became?
Don't freak me out with that quote. Let's not get there because that's all I'll be able to talk about.
All conspiracy theories. But no, I usually find it write for yourself first because that's where your truth comes from. And then in terms of the audience, I mean, your audience is important, right? Because without them, I mean, you're just screaming into a void, which is fine.
Sometimes we need that. Sometimes you just need that. My void is my closet. Okay, I go hide from my kids in my closet, turn the light off. If there's wine in there, just ignore it. Okay, just ignore that. No one needs to see that. Okay, we all have a void. Just saying.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So, but the audience is important for you there, you know, in order to hear it, to digest it. But, you know, I also think that it's important that you treat your audience with respect. I always like to think that a lot of people like to dumb stuff down, and I'm just like, you don't have to do that. Audience members are actually very smart. Give them a puzzle, give them something to solve, and they're probably going to enjoy the work so much more. That's at least my 2 cents on that. But
I like that 2 cents. That's a good 2 cents.
All right,
I like that.
I'll give you 10 cents then.
Okay, I like that 2 cents.
But yeah, more so in terms of like writing books, it's more so plays and theater, and now this podcast series. And Maria is actually one of the fabulous actors in the podcast series, and she is also a brilliant actor, not only for podcasts but also for screen, theater. And then Maria, you also have a podcast, right?
Yeah. I also have my own podcast, which is a completely separate project and different kind of ish writing, but it's called When You're Invisible, and that's like more personal journal with interview based work, which is really great. And I get to still talk to people, and I love telling people stories. And I think like overall, that's like my heart is like a storyteller. So however that might need to come in, whether a collaborator or writing my own stuff or as an actor, that's how it manifests for me. I'm not necessarily a writer per se in the way you all are.
All actors think they're writers. All actors think they're writers.
They are. I think that they are. I mean, like during the whole entire production process of Murder We Spoke, I mean, Maria was a huge influence on like the rewrites and edits. I mean, very much so informed her character. Go ahead, Maria.
Yeah, and that's what I love. I think like when you get a good writer where you can like talk about what's happening and then like what the picture is, and then when you get to look at it from a specific angle where you're like, okay, if I'm looking at it from the lens of this person through this story, like how does this work for me or for this character? And then also I get to take a little bit of the role of the audience member early on and get to be like, this is what I would be asking. This is what I'm wondering about. And like, this is what I'm excited about.
Well, here's the thing, as an actor, don't you really take the character that the writer writes and develop it more in your own mind as you work on your presentation, right?
Heck yeah.
And that's what I'm talking about. I mean, you're taking a character and you're doing a full development of that character as an actor.
Yeah.
Because that's how you act, right?
Yep.
And that's writing also.
Yeah, and I love that part of the work, like getting to be like, how did this person get to this moment, and like what happened in their day before this? What do they like to eat, even sometimes, if it's useful, or like the shoes they wear. The shoes that Paula wears is super important. You hear it through the podcast, and I just think about like how she arrived at like always wearing heels, and like what kind of person does that, right? And like thinking about that, and I love that part. It's like the imaginative part of like the kid in you too, that used to daydream while you're like on the swing or running around, and your parents are like, "Where the heck are you?" And you're like, "Oh, I'm lost in my own world."
That's how you're trained, isn't it? As an actor, that's how you're trained.
Yeah, there's different methodologies and stuff, but you are trained to like think about this person as a full human, and then how they serve in the arc. And so like, why does this arc move forward with this person in this way? But you are very much trained to take the character seriously as a person, and understand their truth in the story.
Well, this is a debate that I read about this weekend.
That's so
Rachel, Maria, thank you very much for helping me go over that. That was my weekend.
Heck yeah.
What was yours?
Adventurous one. It's a good adventurous weekend.
Absolutely, yeah.
Seriously.
Who's next?
What about the rest of the weekends?
I know.
Oh, I have a house full of people here, all my kids and their dogs and everybody, because nobody has power.
You're
and,
like Aimee during Harvey. Yeah.
Yes. So, but thankfully the power came on for us late Thursday night. Actually, Russell, we were in the Galleria, and we were at a restaurant opening, eating tacos and margaritas. And we like looked outside. We're like, it's black outside. It's literally black, and it came like super fast. And my kids were on the road, and I'm trying to call them, and nobody has a signal, and they're just like, Mom, we're in the road. And it was very scary. It was very scary to hear them, and they were like trying to pull over. One of them was on the freeway, one of them was like in the neighborhood, but it was scary. But we were just sitting there like, I can't. Watching the radar on your phone is a whole nother thing than living it, just like thinking like. So as soon as it was over, we left, and we're like, we need to get home, because they were saying all these things were happening. And so when we left, it was like the 2 minutes, like I guess after all this stuff hit, and it was like war zone everywhere. And it was just, we were just so glad to go home during the daylight, because I can imagine trying to navigate that in the dark, because there was trees in the roads and going around and things like that. And sheet metal.
You had like that big power line, or like power grid.
Well, yeah, that's what my daughter called me. She was like, don't get on the freeway. Because the power line is across the way. And actually I had DVR'd a show, and the news had preempted it, and it was showing them pulling the power line off the entire freeway. You're like, oh, that was really bad. And I saw that. So this weekend I had to go into town for a graduation party, and then for a cooking class yesterday, and just the wow factor, because you're seeing entire billboards down, like giant billboards down, trees like twisted, just all these things. And then you can see the towers. Just like my husband described it, like Godzilla walked through your neighborhood and knocked everything over. Just like that's what it looked like.
That's the best way to describe it. Yeah, I was seeing some of the videos of it, and they're like, watch how quick, like it literally went like you thought it was midnight outside.
It was,
in the videos. And I don't know why Houston, like you guys, I love your city, but you guys are just insane down there. Okay, I only lasted 5 years in that city. But your weather is insane, because I got the same stuff, and it was like 40-mile-per-hour winds. I mean, we had like some flooding. It wasn't like bad. And you guys just like were like, oh, okay, watch this. Like, hold my cup, okay? And you just went crazy. I don't know why y'all did that.
The thing is,
y'all were insane.
And they were like, yeah, it's going to be a bad storm, severe thunderstorm warning. Yeah, there might be a tornado warning. And you know how you always hear that on the news. You're like, okay. Not really thinking it's going to fly through the city.
One of the coolest things that I will say, though, that I have witnessed, because Houston does have a lot of, I'm going to label as catastrophic things happen, because you get a lot of hurricanes and stuff, right? But that city really comes together when you guys get such catastrophic things happening. Literally everybody goes out to help one another if they can. It is like, it brings you back to just humbling society, It's a fabulous thing. So
well, I'm having a total deja vu. We're empty nesters, and so now we have the whole house back. I'm like, okay, wait, I got to cook for like 9 people again. I had to go to the grocery store. The grocery store was like insane. Gas lines were insane, and you're just like, okay, all right, we've done this before. We're gonna do it again, and survival mode. It's all good. We got people on the couch. We got people in the office. We got people everywhere, and it's just fine. It's fun.
That's how. See, but you have more square footage. We did the same thing in 600 square feet. We went and got everybody off the first floor of our apartment building because it was gonna flood.
Well, that's right. Because you were in Clear Lake.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
We got like 54 inches of rain. It was fun times, you guys. Fun times. But Rachel, Maria,
we're all just thriving and doing great and doing this great podcast. It's all good. But you know what? That's like life experiences we can put into our work. So and to your characters and whatever, and then you have another story to tell. Just like you were saying, you're a storyteller, so this is like part of our journey.
For sure.
Yeah, you guys are really selling Texas to me.
Right now it's like yesterday it was like 95 degrees with the humidity, and you're just like, woo.
Yeah, that's just Houston. Okay, I mean today it's 90 degrees, pretty humid. And I'm an hour and a half north. Okay. And then the further you up, the more you feel like you're in an oven. We don't get seasons. Yeah, we don't get seasons.
Great.
It's hot as hell. And then you wish that your AC could keep up with how cold you want it to be. Those are our
seasons. All good.
So what did Rachel and Maria do this weekend?
Yeah. I hope y'all had a much more fun, exciting time.
Yeah. I mean, the weather was beautiful in Chicago, which is where I'm from and currently based. Had a great weekend. I went to a Cubs game because that's the only team you should root for if you're in Chicago. I say that boldly. Don't say the other team's name. So, and they won. They beat the Pittsburgh Pirates. It was a wonderful game. Gorgeous out. Wrigley Field is beautiful as ever. So it was. For me, that's like truly, it's not Memorial Day. That's what truly kicks off summer for me.
Yeah, Rachel, that's like walking into history when you go to a Cubs game, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it is.
I mean, you can feel the history.
Yeah, I mean, like they updated the stadium, but a lot of it is still it is very old still, right? Oh no, somebody said the White Sox. No, don't you dare say that while I'm
Mickey, you're dead to us now, Mickey. You are dead to us. We all knew not to say that. We all knew. We were like, we were treading lightly. We were treading lightly right there.
But it is a historical stadium, very much so reminiscent of the past. I will say this though, to play a little fairness to my South Side counterparts, is their stadium is very nice.
Okay. Well, that's nice to say. That's nice to say that they have a nice stadium.
Yes. I love that you said that with no smile, Rachel.
Very nice stadium. But that was my weekend. Got to kick off summer that way. So nice and breezy in Chicago. No tornadoes here.
Oh, good. Good.
Hey, we count our blessings every day.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Maria, what about you?
I got to enjoy some of the nice weather we're having here in New York. There was a little bit of rain, but not a lot. And the Knicks lost in the playoffs for the NBA. It was Game 7 yesterday, and it was insanely packed at every bar to watch. And we lost. So it was like a great weekend, but also a very sad sports day in New York City.
Aww.
What's great is we're all
sports fans. I did not know that anybody cheered for the Knicks.
You have to. You have to. In New York, it gets a little scary. Like,
I know.
He's just taking a dig.
He's
just taking a dig.
She told you I was going to do that.
He's just taking a dig. Yeah.
I need to thank our listeners. We have most of the people listen to us during the week, not during our live broadcast on Monday mornings while they're driving to work or they're working out. And we want to thank them for listening to us. We're top 10 independent book podcast in America, and we very much are humbled by that. We can't imagine that so many people want to listen to us jabber about our weekends, but we can't imagine why people want to listen to new authors and the podcast authors today. We're very excited about it because we usually don't have other podcast producers or actresses. Sometimes we do. And so we're very excited about it. Aimee, where can they find us?
Yes, this is Russell's golden question, you guys, because now he can finally find us, which is why I'm going to tell you where you can find us. Literally everywhere, okay? My go-to is Amazon, Spotify. If you're an iPhone user, Apple. I'm an Android, so Google's where I go. Good Pods, all of those lovely places is how you can find us. Crimson, red, and gold, because one, it's a fabulous choice, and two, I'm selfish, and those are my favorite colors, and that's what our logo is. We've been doing this for 8 years, Russell, coming up on 8 years. I thoroughly enjoy, I don't go back and watch us, but I enjoy engaging with others that do watch us. And I do control what comes out of my mouth, but not my facial expressions. Russell will tell you I have no poker face. So you generally will know what's on my mind all the time. So if you want to come on over to our YouTube channel, our Facebook group, or any one of our social media channels to check us out, hang out with us, ask us questions in the chat while we're live, you're more than welcome to do that. All 8 years of our show is up there. So you can watch how we have evolved into what we currently are and where we will go in the future. But Rachel, Maria, I'm dying to talk to you guys about what all you guys have going on. So Valerie, let's get them talking about their projects and their stuff and what all they have going on.
All right. So Murder We Spoke, a true crime podcast. That sounds just insanely cool. Because I love true crime. I could just like listen. But y'all's has like a little plot twist, right? With the angle. Tell us a little bit about that, please.
Sure. So I'll dive in first, and then I always love hearing like what Maria and the rest of the folks in the crew have to say, what their vision is of it. So for me, Murder We Spoke is a true crime podcast within a podcast within a podcast. So it's not your typical true crime podcast where it's two people discussing a crime or interviewing each other. It's a narrative fiction. So think back into the days of Orson Welles and War of the Worlds. It's a radio play. And Maria is one of the fabulous actors in this multicast series. And the play, or the podcast rather, see how used to it, I'm so used to that. The podcast follows, it's a 9-episode series that follows 3 women on their attempt to become podcasting legends. They want to climb the charts. They want to do international tours. They want to be number 1 in the true crime world. But as they continue to follow their dream, the more and more like their serial killer subjects they become. And Maria is one of the pinnacle characters in the podcast. So she is one of the ones that goes down that dark path. So Maria, you want to talk about your take on what the podcast is?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think like that is definitely what the podcast is. And it's also like you get moments of like the present, and then you get moments of interviews, and then you get moments of like reenactments of like, we jump back in time and watch this moment in real time with the 3 women who are trying to launch this podcast. And I definitely am like, oh my, like that frustration that you want to succeed and stuff, and that you're deep diving and researching intensely to figure this out. And then the why are we not successful? And all the things of like feeling left behind or feeling frustrated in life, and that like this is the thing to do, and how that shapes like these women and their choices, and also like how well do you know your friends? And that's something that is always fun in this series, is like, oh wait, what are you thinking? What did you just do? And then what secrets we keep from each other, and what secrets we like are also like willing to keep for people, I think is a really interesting part of this podcast.
Can you tell us how this all came about, first of all? Because it sounds like it's such a unique concept.
Yeah, so this actually started, this whole entire series is about 5 years in the making. It initially started as a play. I had this idea that I wanted to do, a 90-minute play about these 3 women. And well, wouldn't you know it, the pandemic hit. And unfortunately, that closed all stage doors across the world. But I knew that the story kept, as a writer, the story just wouldn't leave me alone in my head. It was just like, figure out how to tell me. So I was like, okay, what if I turn this into a podcast? So I got together with some very close friends of mine, and I was like, hey guys, I got this really weird idea, and you can tell me you hate it and that it's stupid, but I think I want to take this play and I want to turn it into a podcast. And they were like, great, let's go. So very grateful for folks who are, for whatever reason, willing to trust me. And this play went from, like I said, a 90-minute thing meant for the stage to 9 episodes for a completely audio medium in a 5-year span.
So did that mean you had to evolve your writing to make into 9 episodes? Because you started with the initial play, like you were saying, 90 minutes, but then wait, we need another episode. And does it actually conclude, or is it going to be like continuing?
So for the first part of that question, yes, had to evolve it, right? And I think, like, talking to other writers here, what is that question we all ask? Does form follow? Does form follow? Something feeds into something else. It's like you decide on the format, and then does that feed into how you tell the story? Whatever. Sorry. But I knew that when I entered this into podcasting, a lot had to change, right? It's no longer a visual medium. So anything that was stage directions had to go out the window, right? Mm-hmm. Because Maria's character, Maria enters, turns on a light. Who's going to hear that? Who's going to see that, rather? So had to change a lot of that. And what ended up happening was turning this into a 9-episode series really expanded the world and gave it this deep breath that I think it needed. This 90-minute format that I tried to shove all of this information into, and it was just so dense and so thick. And quite honestly, it would have made a really cruddy play. It would have just been awful. So I'm so happy that, like, this is something that happened that allowed me to explore this new medium, because it gave it space to breathe and for us to really get into these characters. So so a lot of that had to change and evolve so that it can be in this audio medium, but for the best reasons possible. And then the second question you asked, I'm sorry, what's coming?
Are we able to, so is it a conclusive story, or is it going to keep, the 9 episodes was enough? And I love that you were able to flesh out your character development through all this, because that is like my pet peeve when people, like, they have all these characters, you're like, oh, well, that was like really, he's so shallow. And then you're like, you can't get the full story. And then by you being able to do that, I'm sure your characters are full of life, full of all kinds of experiences to share.
Well, I'll let Maria talk about that next, but in terms of, what's next with the podcast, so the 9 episodes do conclude the series. The series does get packaged up. However, and I think this might be the first Maria's also hearing of this, and I really hope that our producers, our production team, Tantrum East, they don't get mad at me for saying this. We are in talks to do a 2nd season. Awesome. I have not written it yet. And therefore, this idea that I'm about to share could very well change tomorrow. Sure. But as of today, the 2nd season I'm feeling is going to be about the parents of each of these characters and how, because you get little glimpses of them in the episodes, but I want to dig even deeper in order to answer, the true crime question of, is it nature, is it nurture, and dig into that just a little bit more. So that possibly could be season 2.
Well, that sounds exciting. Very exciting.
Yeah. But that whole entire concept of, like, giving the idea space to breathe and develop those characters, like you were talking about, Valerie, that was huge. And I think, Maria would be able to, Maria, did you feel like you had a lot to explore, a lot of meat?
Yeah, there? For sure. I think the other thing that like, I feel like we had so much to work with, and the lovely thing is I got to be a part of it for a while. So I got to see how it changed, and I got to see how, like, I guessed this about this character, and then we add a story that makes so much sense, or we add a story where I'm like, oh, this is where this comes from, this impulse of hers, or like, this is where she feels like the first impulse to, like, to put on a show and lie about something or whatever it is. I don't want to give too much away. But it was really cool to watch and see, like, okay, great. This is exciting because we don't always get those origin stories, or we don't always get to sit with these different characters. It depends on the series, or it depends on what the project. So it was really exciting to do that. And then the other thing too is, like, you get more information about other characters, which helps inform the relationship between characters, where I'm like, oh, okay, I see why this character is this person in the friend group, like the one who's like the bossy one, or the quiet one, or the one who kind of pulled the strings. Like, we can see the reason why they are that way, which then helps implement further, like, and cement the relationships that show up as well, which I think I really, really loved. And then also getting to be like, there's moments where these characters are really smart, and there's moments when these characters make dumb decisions, like, or you feel that way. And then, so then you get the full range of getting to see this person have those moments. And you're like, yeah, not everyone is perfectly, like, thought out all the time, or like, you get to see these characters under pressure and having to make quick decisions. So I really loved getting to get that full picture of it, and really getting to develop.
And I saw in the 9 episodes, it says there's unsolved murders to iconic serial killers. Can you expand on that a little bit, please?
Sure. So that's what the 3 women cover. So the 3 main characters, they run this podcast called Murder We Spoke. And the 3 main characters are Bernie, Paula, and Cress. Maria plays Paula. And they run their Murder We Spoke is kind of the typical true crime podcast that we're all very much used to, right? So it's 3 hosts that sit around a table and pick some sort of true crime story, and then chat about it, their theories, and tell the audience all about it. So they cover everything from, people like Dahmer and Gacy, to even cult leaders like Manson and Jones and all that. So they are in this world, very much so in the minds of these people all the time. They are kind of obsessed with the violence and the depravity that all these people do. And I think that kind of informs their mindset and their journey as they slowly start to become more like those folks, whether they like it or not.
Creepy. So creepy. Russell, go ahead. I know you probably have a lot of questions.
How'd you know I'm dying? So, Rachel, has Maria or one of your other actors taken a character somewhere that you didn't anticipate, you never planned, you didn't like, or you were like very excited that they went? And how did that happen? I mean, as a writer, I'm totally into what does the actors do to your writing that sometimes you're like, no, don't do that, or oh my gosh, I never thought of that. That's even better.
Actors make it better, honestly. Like, and I'm not even saying that because Maria's on the line. Actors truly make the work better and stronger. A lot of writers, especially for when we're talking about things like theater or film, maybe I even want to bring that back and say more so for theater. A lot of writers have different viewpoints on this, so this is just mine. Your writing, I believe that my writing should be strong enough and solid enough that anybody anywhere can pick up the script, and how they're going to read that line is going to be generally the same, right? Somebody isn't going to pick up the script, read a line, and it's going to take on a completely different meaning. So one of the beautiful things about working with actors is when I see an actor take a line, take a moment, whatever, and put an entirely different meaning on it, that is just, I dig into that. I lean in and I'm just like, where did you get that? Because oftentimes, I'm sure that this is true for all of you, you write something, it makes total sense in your head. How can anybody, misinterpret this? This is clear as day. And then the second a reader gets it, you're just like, that went off in a completely different direction. So one of the beautiful things about theater and working with actors is that I have a moment to actually lean in and dig into that. And sometimes that other direction the actor took it in is more brilliant than what I intended and what I wrote. And lucky for me, I get to kind of borrow that idea and say that it's mine now. And Maria definitely did help that. Maria was around for some of the very, very earliest works drafts of this. And for me, and this is true for the entire 5 years that the podcast has been development, that for me was probably the biggest, the biggest note of thanks, that the majority of the cast that you hear was here from the beginning. A couple of newbies came in, and some folks had to leave because they had other shows, other gigs. That's just the nature of it. But the majority of them stuck around. And to me, I was just like, that is the biggest compliment, right? Because they could have been like, I hate this playwright, I hate the script, I don't want to be involved with it. But they kept coming back. And with that, I got to see how in their mind, they interpreted the script, they interpreted the development. And I got to kind of create these characters, curate them to the actor. So very much so, Maria is not Paula by any means.
I hope not.
Maria is not Paula by any means. They are a completely normal, lovely person that is nonviolent. But Maria, you did inform much of Paula. The things that she says, the way that she made decisions, like a lot, especially the later episodes, truly came from how you took those very, very early drafts. So that's what helped inform a lot for me.
That's so cool to hear.
Yeah. So developing your storyline, what did you use for inspiration? Were you just doing a lot of research, or did you grow up reading a lot of crime, or what was your impetus there?
It's funny because when we were doing like the production meetings for this, we all got to, ask each other, like, what was your introduction to true crime? And Maria, remind me, were you one of the people who were just like, I never listened or watched or?
So my mom is a fan of true crime, and I can be such a scaredy cat that I can only listen to true crime at a certain time in the day. Otherwise, my imagination's like, nope, we're going to go wild. So I was kind of like the in-between state where I'm like, I can appreciate it and I like it, but I'm not a true crime junkie.
Yeah. So I am more so the room was filled with all different types of folks from all ends of the spectrum, super duper into true crime to what does that even mean, right? I am on the former end. I grew up watching America's Most Wanted. My mother would have, Law and Order blaring in the background almost every single day. I've read and seen almost every documentary, everything you can think of. And I think, like, in terms for podcasting, one of the biggest ones for me was, Serial. I think that's what put kind of true crime podcast on the map. So, I mean, in terms of like research for this inspiration, it was just kind of like what I normally watch on Netflix.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Can I ask a couple more questions?
Go.
Okay. The first question is, in your second season possibility, have you considered them being concerned with the Alex Murdaugh? That was that attorney from South Carolina that was kind of all over the press last year when it blew up.
Mm-hmm.
And so have you considered using that? How recent are the murders that they deal with? My second question is, in your writings, are they in just in the podcast room? Is that where the play takes place? Or do they explore out to a courtroom or investigate with the district attorney or anything?
Gotcha. So for the first question, first of all, the Alex Murdaugh murders, that is just what a tangled web we weave. Like, that is just insane. It's almost very Shakespearean. If we can make this come full circle, how that, a tragic fall from
I love
family.
you, Rachel.
Yeah.
I was just thinking Menendez brothers also.
So a lot of what I will say is that a lot of the personality traits, the tics, things like that I infuse into the characters are inspired by certain crimes and certain killers. So when we do season 2, right, we're going into their parents' background. So this is during the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And for me, that was such an interesting time in true crime, because I don't know what was in the water, but for me, it seems like there was a lot of serial killing happening in that time frame. So it's just going to be very fascinating to see which particular serial killers or crimes I focus on in order to inform each of the parents. But something like Murdaugh could very well happen. We'll just have to see where it fits in. And then could you remind the second question, if you could remind me one more time?
I don't even remember it now. I think it was, do you have, or do your scenes go outside the podcast room? Do they go, where is this play that is a podcast? Where does it take place?
This is funny because this is very much so what we talked about in depth while we were like in production meetings for this. Whenever we would just do table talks, right, with the actors, and the actors would get a chance to ask questions like very important questions. Where am I now, Rachel? And I'd be like, where do you feel you are? That's usually like a dead giveaway, how you know, like the writer doesn't have an answer. Where do you feel you are? That's usually my tell. But for this in particular, we get very meta with this podcast series because it's satire, right? In all, this series is a satirical look at our obsession with true crime. And with that, it's a podcast and a podcast and a podcast. So we have the first layer of this crazy world that I created is a podcast that is hosted by the folks of Tantrum East. And they heard about this story by this other podcast called Something Fishy, who was covering the notorious murders of Murder We Spoke. So it's Tantrum East covering Something Fishy, covering Murder We Spoke. So pretty much anytime you hear Paula, Maria, we are in the Murder We Spoke world, and that takes place in their podcast studio. That takes place at their place of work. That takes place, their everyday lives. What did they do over the weekend? You get to see a glimpse of them as if it's like an actual play being performed. Then when we see the Something Fishy folks, that's them talking to the 3 Murder We Spoke women as they are behind bars for their various crimes, and interviewing them and having them reflect on how they got to where they were. And then we go back up to Tantrum East, who is just encompassing all this in a big umbrella. And even just listening to myself talk, I feel like I just scribbled like just all over the place. This is how my brain worked. I promise that in listening, it makes a ton more sense than me talking. This is why I'm a writer and not a talker. And I wanted Maria on this. I knew this would happen. So yeah. Maria, do you have like a better way to sum up everything?
I mean, well, the big thing is like we deal with present day and the past. And we deal with jail and having interviews happening in prison across from these women. And then we deal with Chicago, and the environment of living in a big city. And that means like going every which way. And yeah, so we do hear like the women who end up getting caught, which at the top once they start getting interviewed. So I don't feel like it's a spoiler, but you hear like what you end up hearing too is just like the women, you'll hear like their world as if it's happening in the present day for them every time we meet them. But you'll jump from like Chicago life into prison life into just a podcast studio.
Thank you.
Nice. That's out of the box thinking and writing to do something like that and create something like that. Like even I'm intrigued, and I feel like you mentioned true crime, and then Maria, you're like your mom watched it, and Rachel, you're like I got it from my mom. I feel like that's a mom thing because I got it from my mom. My mom still watches like First 48 and like all these crime shows, and so I always felt like if something were to happen, I would get away with it because I've watched so many shows,
right?
CSI, all this stuff, right? But I don't have a poker face, so Russell knows it. I wouldn't get away with it. But it's one of those things. I feel like that's just a mom thing, like a woman thing.
Yeah, it's such a thing. And but it's funny. It's like we get to watch it all, but like women we don't often hear about women doing it. Like too. Like, so that was something as an actor that was really intriguing. It's like, I usually get to play like sassy, sweet, heartbroken, right? But I don't get to play a killer. I don't get to think about or like how I want to, like how I would take a life. Like, what the heck? Like that only all usually falls under men who get to play that or even do it in life. But like
all my antagonist killers in my books are women.
They are women.
Yeah, I must have some kind of psychological problem.
They're pretty badass too. They're pretty badass.
All my killers are women.
Rachel and Maria, so how can we listen to your series, potentially a season 2? How can we listen and find it?
So you can catch me and Maria on and all the other characters. There's a bunch of places you can go. So we have a website, murderwespoke.com. That'll give you all the information you need and more. If you want to learn more about Maria and her projects, please go visit. Her website is attached to that as well. So murderwespoke.com. We have a TikTok, Murder We Spoke Podcast. We have an Instagram, Murder We Spoke Podcast. We have a Facebook. I think you're catching on to a theme here, Murder We Spoke Podcast. And then in terms of listening, we are basically everywhere you want to listen to podcasts. We're on Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon, all those big hitters. So pick your favorite platform and go find Murder We Spoke.
Nice. I like it. Well, I'm getting the stink eye from Russell, and that's never a good sign. It usually ruins my day. So we sadly have to say goodbye to you, lovely women, but I'm going to go check it out. And I'm going to listen to it because this is right up my alley, and I'm in between books right now. And this sounds very gap filler for me in between books. So I'm excited, and I will let you know my thoughts on it. But I want to thank all of you, Rachel and Maria, for coming and hanging out with us and talking to us about it, because it is a creative, different approach to it. And I love outside of the box thinking. So I think that this is amazing. So before I let you go, let's do last minute questions, comments, statements. Russell first.
Okay. You covered the first one. Thank you, Rachel, for telling people where they can find your productions, because sometimes we interview authors. They want to keep that a secret. And so thank you very much. I would love, it would take a whole different podcast for me to ask you about the dialogue and how you differentiate, because you were Maria was talking about doing it some in prison. And, I practiced law for 40 years. There's a whole different language in prison than's anywhere else. And I would love to ask you questions on how you work that, but I can't because we're out of time. So I hope that we see you again, perhaps at the beginning of your second season. If it happens, you can come back so I can ask you that question.
Absolutely. There is a lawyer character in there. So listen for her.
Nice.
See if I hit that dialogue correct.
Nice. Valerie, what about you?
Oh, I'm just really enjoy talking to you guys, and the whole concept is just so intriguing. I just can't wait to get in there and dive in.
Yes.
Congratulations.
going to be awesome. So thank you guys for taking time out of your morning to come and hang out, or afternoon, come and hang out with us and to tell us about Murder We Spoke. Make sure you guys go and check it out. Let them know your thoughts. And I'm excited just for the potential of season 2. You're going to have to come back and talk to us so Russell can get his opportunity to ask you questions. So thank you guys so much for being on. So you guys, we hope the rest of you guys have a fantastic Monday, a great rest of your week. But until next Monday, bye for now, everybody.
Bye.